expensive price. LifeLock 800-440-4833, Hoover, Alabama. Hello, Bob. I'm glad you waited. It's great to have you on the program, sir.
Thanks, Rush. I appreciate it. Listen, this thing you mentioned earlier about Clinton saved everything, I think there's a byproduct here people aren't thinking about. The Democrats have this disdain for the American people, the mistrust for the American people, the lack of confidence in the American people.
That's true.
Now, it wasn't Bill Clinton that saved the economy. Of course, it was Republican Congress and the American people. We went to work. We create the jobs. We're the ones that do it. But the Democrats on national television, luckily nobody was watching, just prove again that they think they're the big dog, and that the American people would just tag along like little puppies.
They want people sitting around waiting for government to do for them. They don't want people being self-reliant.
Absolutely. But the byproduct here is it proves their disdain for all of us out here. That they don't think we have the capability. If they would just get out of the way and let us build this country, we could do it. But the Democrats don't think that way.
Well, they don't want you doing. There's no need for them if you're able to do that. And I'll tell you something else, Bob. If you're able to demonstrate to a moron that he has more control over his destiny than the government does, then the moron's no longer a moron and thus no longer needs government. That's what they can't afford. They can't afford self-reliant people. It's bye-bye Democrat liberalism if more and more people become self-reliant.
Well, that's the problem. And I think the American people, listening to you and other conservatives, and listening to Ryan, it's easy. I mean, all that Romney and Ryan have to say is what I just said. Not that I'm that smart, but I agree with you about something else, Rush. I'm so tired of thinking that these politicians are not as smart as me, and I'm not that smart.
They aren't. They aren't. They live in a cloistered and closed world, and they hobnob with each other, and they begin to believe all the pap that circulates within their bubble. But they think they're indispensable. I think you can't get along without them, and they want you thinking that way. We sit here and we say that presidents don't create jobs in the private sector, and we mean that, folks, in a really strict and literal way. There's not one president that creates a job. But on the other hand, a case could be made that Bill Clinton caused this recession, or was at the beginning of the cause of it. Who was it that insisted the banks make these loans to people that couldn't ever pay them back? That was Bill Clinton and Janet Reno. Oh, and Andrew Cuomo, who's now the governor of New York, he was the HUD secretary. They were all in on this. And it was all oriented on this notion that it's unfair that some Americans don't have houses while other people do. It's an example of an unfair country. And so, to make the country fair, they went to the people they thought were responsible, the banks. The banks were not lending to these poor people. The banks were not lending to people of color because the banks are racist, sexist pigs. And so Clinton and the Democrats and the feel-good liberals went to the banks and said, you're going to start lending money to them. You're going to give them mortgages. Or we're going to investigate you. We got this law called the Community Reinvestment Act, and you have to make loans available to them. The bank said, well, they can't pay them back. That's not our problem. So I've been through this. The banks loan the money and then figure out creative ways to not take the loss, but rather pass it along to some other sucker. And they kept cultivating new groups of suckers to buy these worthless mortgages until there weren't any more suckers left. And then it blew up. And that's how we had the subprime mortgage crisis. Now, you could say that Bill Clinton, Jimmy Carter, who actually was the forefront of this, Bill Clinton got this thing started. With the best of intentions. Oh, yes. Poor people in homes. And I might add that George W. Bush thought it was a good idea, too. It's a good idea to say so. Let's put it that way. These are politicians after. It's a good idea to say, yeah, it'd be great if more Americans had the American dream and owned their own home. So, hello, subprime mortgage crisis. Presidents, and Obama's proving it, they can prolong economic malaise. Jimmy Carter proved it. They can prolong it They can punish achievement with taxes, regulations. Democrats do that. But as far as creating jobs, Obama wouldn't know how. Roads, bridges, shovel ready. He doesn't have the slightest idea how a business is created, invested in, grown.